Hi guys, so following threats made towards members of staff who work at the ports in Northern Ireland, Michael Gove has reached out, or he sent this letter to the Vice President of the European Commission. Now, these threats that took place were towards members of staff because there are certain elements within Northern Ireland who are very unhappy with how Boris Johnson's Brexit deal has panned out. They wanted a border on the island of Ireland. They didn't want it between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Now, I've talked about this before, but what happened was that these unsavory elements within the unionist community, the loyalist community, were seen recording registration plates and license plates of cars that were parked around the ports, trying to find out if these are members of staff, to intimidate them, basically. This is their modus operandi. This is their way of dealing with things they don't like. They intimidate people. And they want to do the same here in this case at the ports. And since a lot of this intimidation, some checks have been cancelled because of for safety reasons, for security reasons. Now, Michael Gove sent this letter to the Vice President of the European Commission, talking about the invoking of Article 16 last Friday that the European Union did not actually do. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to tie the two things together. Now, they are not exactly related because the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland, the pro-union party, they have been complaining about the protocol since the beginning of the new Brexit era, since the beginning of the year. Michael Gove is trying to link the two things, and he wants the European Commission to extend this grace period until 2023. So I'm going to read part of the letter that Michael Gove sent to the European Commission. So he says, thank you for our discussions over the weekend on the Northern Ireland Protocol. I appreciate your constructive approach and clear desire to improve the situation on the ground. As we discussed, I'm writing to set out the rapid action that I believe is now required. As I indicated in our call, I think it is important first to report the overwhelming reaction there has been in Northern Ireland and across these islands at the events of Friday. I had expected a strong response, but the response was even more negative than I anticipated. So what he's talking here, of course, is about the European Union's consideration of invoking Article 16. Now, of course, he doesn't mention that Boris Johnson 2 weeks before talked about invoking Article 16, and we didn't hear a peep from anyone. Boris Johnson even on Wednesday during Prime Minister's questions talked about invoking Article 16 as well, and we didn't hear anything from the media. Anyway, he says, across all parties, civic society and business organisations in Northern Ireland, there was a sense of shock and anger. The feelings of disappointment were particularly acute given the concerns that have already risen about the practical operation of the protocol. Now, the protocol is one thing. The problem here is Brexit. It's not the protocol. The protocol is a means for Northern Ireland to remain part of the customs union in regards to trading in goods and its economic and societal effects. The real concern that all citizens and businesses have about their health and livelihoods at this very difficult time during the pandemic and deepens anxiety. So he's talking basically here, the problem here is that you were attempting to invoke Article 16, and that's a problem, and people were very angry about this. Now, he makes some suggestions about the way forward. So I want to read some of the suggestions that Michael Gove has made. At this part in the letter, he says, the protocol is clear that it should impact as little as possible on the everyday life of communities. With this in mind, the UK government therefore believes that we should reach agreement this week on the following proposals. So he's telling the EU, you need to do this, basically. The EU didn't create these problems. The protocol was created in order to allow Northern Ireland to remain part of the customs union and the single market. this was in a sense almost a stopgap, because the European Union had reached out to the UK and said, look, do you want the UK, that being Great Britain and Northern Ireland, to remain part of the single market and the customs union? And Brexiteers, including Michael Gove, said, no, we don't want that. We'd prefer Northern Ireland to be part of that, not Great Britain. So the alternative was, okay, well, if Northern Ireland's in the single market, then we need to have some sort of checks coming across the border. And Michael Gove and Boris Johnson agreed to that. And they said, yeah, no problem, okay. Some things we don't like about it, but we agreed to it. We ran it through Parliament, and we're happy with that. And the DUP were complaining about it, and they were ignored. Not that the DUP have legitimate complaints. The DUP just want to put a hard border on the island of Ireland. They don't want the border in the Irish Sea. They want it on the island of Ireland. But that would have created problems for the Good Friday Agreement. So what are his requests? He says, the arrangements that currently apply to supermarkets and their suppliers must be extended until at least the 1st of January 2023. Not 2022, 2023. The eligibility for these arrangements must be adapted so that all relevant businesses and services are able to be included as authorized traders. So what he wants is that trade from Great Britain into Northern Ireland is frictionless. The EU have a problem with this because Northern Ireland's in the single market, Great Britain is not. And this would be, other countries that are on the border with Europe would say, well, how come Great Britain are able to have frictionless trade and we're not? So I don't know how well this will fly in the EU. Using the threat of these paramilitaries in order to convince the EU to allow flexibility, I think is problematic. He also says a permanent solution. Now, remember once again that Michael Gove and Boris Johnson agreed to the protocol. They were happy with the protocol. Now they want it changed. A permanent solution must be put in place for those chilled meat products moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland that are otherwise prohibited. The problem with these is that certain products are coming into Northern Ireland. There's a possibility that they're going to be sold on in the Republic of Ireland and they need to be checked. He wants this suspended or extra something else put in place. And this, of course, is going to be extended until the 1st of January 2023. The temporary arrangements, number 3, the temporary arrangements that are currently in place for parcels, including the Royal Mail Group, moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, must remain in place until at least 2023. Basically, he wants everything. He wants the can kicked down the road for another 2 years. The arrangements on medicines agreed last December should be extended to a further year until 2023 to address the anomalies caused by the unilateral legislation introduced by the Commission last year on EU import quotas, including tariff rate quotas. The United Kingdom will set out solutions to enable goods to move tariff-free in line with product-specific quotas. We're going to do this. We want you to do something similar on your end. And then finally, he says, respecting the unique circumstances of the island of Ireland, of course, because the island of Ireland is unique, this merits a special circumstance or a special condition or something extra for them. The Commission should authorise the Irish Government under Article 4.1 of the Council Decision 2020-135 to negotiate a bilateral agreement that comprehensively addresses the barriers that are imposed on pet travel between Great Britain and Northern Ireland and Ireland. So how did the EU respond to this? Well, the EU, according to RT News, says the EU concern over tone of Gove's demand on Northern Ireland Protocol. I just want to read a little part here. It says officials say that the UK has yet to make other make use of other flexibilities such as data generated. So the problem is that the EU have put in place measures. The EU predicted there were going to be problems. So they put in place measures for the UK to use in order to help overcome some of these issues. The problem is that the UK have not put them in place. Now, they may not have put them in place because they didn't want to spend money to put these things in place. They didn't want to put in the infrastructure. Remember that Boris Johnson was telling people in Northern Ireland, there will be no checks. Everything will flow freely. If we're not going to put in any infrastructure. If anyone tells you to fill out a form, you call me up and I'll tell them to put it in the bin. It says, sorry, I want to read the first part here. It says the UK and the EU signed a partnership agreement on the 17th of December in which London agreed to grant the EU access to HMRC's data system. In return, the EU agreed to facilitate a trusted trader scheme that simplified customs formalities. However, EU sources say access has not yet been facilitated. So the EU have said we're going to let you use this trusted scheme. It hasn't been facilitated. Now, I don't know the reason for this. Is it on the EU side? Is it that traders in Northern Ireland or in Great Britain are trying to access it and they can't because it has to go through the UK first? Officials also said that the UK has yet to make use of other flexibilities, such as data generated when goods are shipped by ferry from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. Such data was envisaged as providing equivalent information as so-called exit summary declarations, which are normally required when goods leave the EU's customs union. So the two men had their agreement, had their phone call, they had a video conference call, but this has yet to be resolved. Once again, it's a case of Michael Gove, Boris Johnson agreeing to something without actually understanding what it's about. They agreed to the protocol, probably without even reading it, thinking, well, it will sort itself out. And now we're seeing that businesses in Northern Ireland are struggling, and it's creating delays. There are shortages of goods, and it needs to be resolved. There seem to be measures to facilitate its resolution, but I think Boris Johnson and the British government really don't know what the hell they're doing. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?